Hello, Gamecock fans. I'm Spencer Ball.
And I'm JP Barry. Welcome to Ball Don't Lie, SGTV's premier live award-winning or award-nominated sports show.
Yeah, the intro gets longer every week. JP and I will be giving you our weekly insight every Sunday.
This week on the show, we're recapping an eventful Week 12 of the college football season.
And later, Gamecock women's soccer and Cock hockey have some big games coming up.
And be sure to stick around for more head-to-head pick'ems.
And without further ado, welcome to Ball Don't Lie.
Welcome to the Kennedy Greenhouse Studio.
I'm Spencer Ball.
And I'm JP Barry.
This is the one where there's a right answer and there's a wrong answer.
I'm always the get-back game guy.
There's so many teams with so many good wins.
Because, they love seeing Clemson lose no matter what.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that love seeing Clemson lose.
Yeah,
Return of the King released 20 years ago today. There you go. And for that reason, give me the Noles.
I like being right more than I like being happy.
I think the committee made the right choice.
Florida State did not lose a football game. It's football. This is college football. How can you not be romantic about baseball? It's just such a tremendous sport.
It's time. Is it time?
I think it's time.
This is Ball Don't Lie.
And the Gamecocks finished their SEC schedule with a bang on Saturday, capturing a ranked win over Mizzou, their first in 5 years, to finish 5-3 in conference play. It was a big win for South Carolina. And in an SEC where they actually only played 8 conference games, so the season ending a little bit early. But it was just, I was there, you were out of town, but what a game that was.
It was awesome, and just because I wasn't in Willie B, I sure was watching it. And really, South Carolina looked like they were going to jump out to what could have been a really sizable win over Missouri, but the Tigers battled back really hard in the second half, made this one a game and took the lead, with under 2 minutes to go. South Carolina, it looked to be one of those games where it was a typical Gamecock moment, You show so much hope. The season really, it's what you make of it the rest of the way. And it looked like they were going to falter, but they finally finished a game. And it really all started with their quarterback, Lenore Sellers. 5 passing touchdowns to 5 different targets. It was just awesome to see him really come into his own. And I think he's been looking better as every week goes on. But last night, he was special.
He's playing like the best quarterback in the SEC right now, and frankly, I don't know if it's really close. The passing ability is unreal, his ability to escape pressure, and his ability with his legs puts him in a tier, an echelon really of his own. They're doing things that they weren't doing at the start of the year. The go route to Nick Harbor, which was something Gamecock fans have been clamoring for all year long. It was so much fun. That's really all it is. It's just a fun team. They're playing good football, and they're just stacking W's, man. They, 4-game win streak, a chance to end the season hot. You got your last home game coming up on this Saturday, but not to rush things, of course. And then you have, your biggest game of the season.
Absolutely, and really, there's a lot of talks about the college football playoff, which of course we will get to later. But South Carolina, right now, I would say without a shadow of a doubt, are the best 7-3 team in the nation. They really do. They look special on both sides of the ball. They got a lot of talent and have really come into their own. As you mentioned, Sellers, the ability with his legs. That play where he just shrugged off Johnny Walker, Mizzou's best pass rusher, to kind of keep the game alive, keep that drive going to take the lead 27-22. That was unbelievable. That was a guy that was wreaking havoc all game long, and Sellers just bodies him off, keeps things going, and the Gamecocks are able to pull it out. But again, 2 games left, and there's been a lot of chaos happening already in college football. Who's to say the Gamecocks can't sneak in? And as we have here, some of the nation's best teams crashed out this week. Here's what you missed from Week 12 of college football. It was an absolute crazy one, JP, and again, I think these college football playoff rankings on Tuesday are going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, they are. A lot of teams in front of Carolina went down. Number 19, Louisville, on the road in Palo Alto, stunned by Stanford at the buzzer on a 52-yard field goal. That shouldn't even happen. Louisville, completely gift-wrapped that one to Stanford.
Some of the
with
worst clock management,
bad clock management, bad coaching,
horrible.
Bad discipline, bad everything for Stanford. That number 22, LSU. Their season's in the gutter now following a 3rd straight loss, I believe. This one at the hands of the Florida Gators, 27-16.
DJ Lagway looks really good.
He
this
does.
Gators team, I think I was a little more down on them than you were, but this game says a lot about them and their ability to really fight out in some tough games. And You know, every week going forward makes it look like, hey, maybe giving Billy Napier another shot isn't a bad idea, especially with this kid under center at the helm.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have, two teams that really didn't look very impressive in the game itself, but Georgia finds a way, wins by 2 touchdowns over number 7 Tennessee. Tennessee hasn't scored 35 points in a football game since September 14th.
Against
Kent State.
And Kent State still doesn't have a win, do
No,
they?
they don't. Tennessee just does not look impressive in any capacity. And frankly, if you take away the name and conference affiliation from both Georgia and Tennessee, I don't know if they're really close towards that playoff. Georgia a lot better, I think, of course, than Tennessee. But there's a big swath of 2-loss SEC teams that I'm interested to see what the committee does.
And we were talking about it earlier. If this was a typical SEC year, it would be really interesting to see South Carolina play these two teams because the way it looks, South Carolina has a lot of good wins. Georgia has Texas and now Tennessee, if you want to call that a good win. But Tennessee just looks flat out unimpressive outside of Dylan Sampson in the backfield.
Yeah, it's just frankly, it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch. Then, of course, you had Arizona State, putting a tough damper on Wazoo's season with a upset 38-35. Wazoo had a 2-touchdown halftime lead, just couldn't hang on to things.
Wait, New Mexico, not Arizona State.
Well, I mixed up my team. Sorry, New Mexico.
Yeah,
but Arizona State, on the other hand, picked up a huge win over number 16 Kansas State in Manhattan, 24-14. In a game where Kansas State no-showed on offense again.
Shockingly to both of us, I think we thought they would be able to just pound the ball on the ground, but Arizona State, man, they look tough and inspired.
The lack of a downfield passing threat from Kansas State really coming back to bite them in some of these games.
And the last game of the week we're going to talk about happened at 10:15 last night in Provo. The Jayhawks go on the road and get a huge win over number 6 BYU. And, JP, it felt like one we were waiting on. BYU kept escaping in the last minute week after week, and you're like, when are these guys going to lose? Last night.
And
Jayhawks finally did it.
Rock Chalk Jayhawk took it upon themselves to deliver us from evil. The college football playoff rankings on Tuesday, they're going to look very different. We look here, Clemson stayed alive with a late win over Pitt.
With a Cade Klubnik 50-yard rushing touchdown. How do you let that happen?
We're looking Clemson and South Carolina, I think, are going to be big winners of the rankings this week. With Louisville losing, Kansas State, Wazoo, lots of teams in that range. LSU will drop out of the rankings. But also, how is the committee going to work out the Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, Tennessee conundrum? Because Ole Miss beat Georgia, Georgia beat Tennessee, Tennessee beat Alabama, Alabama beat Georgia. And it's this whole, the conference realignment has caused these schedules where these top teams aren't playing each other as much. And so we don't really have...
There's a graph there where, everybody's eating everybody. And,
exactly. The circle of suck.
Yeah.
But, in a year like this, in a normal year, South Carolina would have played both Tennessee and Georgia. And who knows if Tennessee or Georgia escapes the Gamecocks with their lives. But also, now the Big 12. Are we looking at a ranking on Saturday where Boise State is a higher-ranked conference champion, in their projection than BYU?
Well, word on the street from the early projections right now, ACC and the Big 12 might just get the conference championship
winners. Which is a shame because these SEC teams aren't good. They're I hate watching Tennessee, watching the softest tissue paper Ole Miss team this entire year lose to Kentucky and get away with it without repercussions. Alabama doesn't have a defense and they can't throw the ball. These teams should have to play each other, and there should be consequences for losing. But unfortunately, the SEC has dominated the talent pool of college football and is trying to emulate 2002 Big Ten teams in their style of play. And it's just horrible. It's a horrible product.
Yeah, I kind of disagree with you a little bit because I do think the SEC is easily the best conference.
No, they lose every premier non-conference game they play. They lose every time they play someone out of conference. They'll lose on rivalry weekend.
How many ACC teams are better than any of those SEC teams?
SMU, Miami. I think Clemson's better than Tennessee. I think Clemson's better than Alabama.
I think Clemson and SMU are two ACC teams. I don't think any of
Miami's
the rest of the SEC.
Miami's offense is too good to lose to somebody like Tennessee.
But
you think
they
Tennessee
lose to
can
Georgia
move
Tech? The I think Tennessee would walk all over.
The The problem is that when an ACC team or a Big 12 team loses once, it's the end of their season. But an SEC team gets to lose 2-3 times. Even as a South Carolina fan, South Carolina has 3 losses. They shouldn't sniff a thing that determines the best team in college football because you've lost 3 times. Even when LSU was ranked high, it was like they lost to Southern Cal and then A&M. I don't believe we're punishing losing enough because now we're just going to stack the deck with Penn State. Oh my God.
I agree with you there. I mean, Penn State's horrible, but it's
Texas. Even if Texas loses, when they finally play someone like Texas A&M, they've been top ranked for so long, they're not going to drop that far. Even though you look at the whole body of work, and they've played a really not great Michigan team, Vanderbilt, Georgia, who they lost to, and then A&M. So I don't know. We'll see.
Well, one last thing is I think the strength of schedule is definitely a big thing because, you look at the ACC and you can talk about the 2 or 3 teams that are actually solid in the conference, but then if they don't play each other, who is the signature win? Like, what is Clemson's signature win?
That's why conference realignment is such a scourge on our world.
Because
we've been robbed. Imagine how cool a Miami at Clemson game would have been this year.
It would be nice because that's where it's so hard to decide. Because
Clemson at SMU.
South Carolina, you can say a 3-loss team. At least they're playing ranked teams. They've won 3 straight games against ranked teams because they at least play ranked teams.
Which, to be
Clemson,
fair,
the only ranked teams Clemson has played, they have lost to.
Yeah.
That's Louisville, and that is Georgia at the start of the year. So you can say what you want about other conferences. At least the SEC has good ranked teams.
Even if we're talking about I think the Big Ten's still better this year. Even though Penn State sucks. We're Indiana Hoosiers guys.
I think it's close. I think it's close. There's a good few teams.
You also have to wonder, would Mizzou be ranked if they weren't in the SEC? I mean, you look at their schedule, it's horrible. Would Vandy be ranked if they were in the SEC when they lost to Georgia State? Anyway, we've drawn on about that a long time. Let's talk about what's going to happen this upcoming week in college football. South Carolina is going to welcome Wofford and the short-haired dogs from the upstate New Williams-Brice for an interstate matchup on Saturday that really should not be happening this late in the season. And it's just like, man, why is this game at 4 o'clock?
It's a 4 o'clock game. You've got, all this momentum kind of riding for South Carolina or quality opponents, a streak that they've been playing. And now you throw Wofford at the end. It's also what you see a lot of other SEC teams do, which I don't think is right.
It's the SEC SoCon Challenge week.
Yeah,
Bama played Mercer.
That's right. Yeah, Alabama gets to play Mercer, and really you get a week off before your rivalry week, which is fine. Because again, what we just talked about, I think if you look at the entire season, South Carolina's had to go through a bit of a gauntlet, but now they get a bit of a layup at the end of the year before their final test against Clemson.
Which South Carolina really lost the Russian roulette of this season because the randomly generated schedule, they lost all their rivalries. They still end up playing a tough schedule, and all these other teams got to play Mississippi State 50 times, it feels like.
Yeah.
But I think we'll see in the future the SEC move to a 9-game conference schedule just because this conference is too big now to not have some of your top teams, because Texas and Ole Miss not playing each other, it sucks. Texas A&M not playing Alabama or Georgia or Ole Miss, they played South Carolina. That's the best team they've played in the conference slate. But hey, South Carolina, like you said, deserves a layup.
And it's weird that it comes at this time. And again, I think you're right. We've gone on a bit of a conference realignment rant here, but it's like
it sucks.
It just sucks. I just don't think it's worked out the right way yet, and it makes sense because it's the first year. So I think the more time that people have to develop schedules, it's it doesn't make sense that South Carolina doesn't get to play the people they've played for 30 straight years for anybody. But just using the Gamecocks as an example, no Florida, no Tennessee, no Georgia.
Yeah, it feels
you keep half the teams you usually play, but the other half just fall by the wayside. And those rivalries are what has made the SEC so special and fun, and it's full of hatred.
Which, as a South Carolina fan, why should I care about playing Oklahoma?
We don't. The only thing that mattered was we went in there and beat them to death.
Truthfully, why should I care about playing Missouri? Missouri's not a South Carolina opponent. You think
we kind of have manufactured a rivalry with them, but
I think there's real genuine hate between Drinkwitz and Beamer and stuff like that. It can be a rivalry for this era, But, like, you look into it, South Carolina is more rivals with teams like Arkansas. We joined the SEC at the same time.
Yeah.
We haven't played them since, we played them, 2 years ago?
It was a non-conference in 22.
That was the first time we played in forever. It's just, South Carolina, I feel like, has gotten the short end of the stick of this. Because they get still a brutal schedule, but also
there's teams we don't care about.
It's just sad. Anyway.
But one last thing. I've said that a billion times. The show's gone a little off the rails. We'll regain it here soon. Boy, it felt good to beat Missouri, didn't it?
It
felt
did.
good.
Yeah, it felt great. It was awesome.
That did make me happy. Yeah, I know we disagreed a little about the strength of conferences. Beating Missouri felt good because those guys talk a lot.
Yeah, and they go on the road to UMass.
That's true.
What's happening
It's
here?
very true. They squeak out games against Vandy. The mighty Gamecocks don't do that. That's all I'll say, yo.
We hammer, meet, nail, yeah.
Yep. And if that matchup wasn't lopsided enough, of course, referring to South Carolina Wofford after our lengthy chat about the state of college football, this is a great game. Number 5 Indiana faces second-ranked Ohio State at home, a matchup they haven't won since 1988, and that was well before our time on this funny earth. But, Coach Sig, who just got an 8-year extension, has got the Hoosiers rolling and undefeated. And this is going to be a good one, man.
Well, he wins. Google him, man. He's just that guy. Frankly, you can make, Indiana's a team that suffered from the conference realignment thing, but in an adverse way because they got this roulette schedule. Normally, they're in a division where they play Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State every year. Big Ten gets rid of divisions. Now they have one game.
Michigan on the schedule looked a lot better at the beginning of the year, but now Michigan cannot throw a forward pass. So Indiana's win over Michigan looks horrible.
And in the last 10 years, Indiana has always, it feels like, given Ohio State a run for their money, at least for a half or two. It's been like, oh, this is the year Indiana finally does it, and it's like Charlie Brown, But it's the Buckeye pulling the football away at the last moment.
Evil Brutus.
It feels like an if not now win moment for Indiana, because if they don't beat Ohio State this year, Ohio State maybe the most vulnerable they've looked in quite some time. Indiana the best they've looked ever. If it doesn't happen now, it will never happen. And that's not to say that I don't think it will happen. I think it's going to be a great game. I wish it was in Bloomington because it would be one of the coolest sights we've seen.
Yeah.
It's still going to be an awesome sight in Columbus, but it's just this team going on the road is going to be hard. It's just hard to face the demons. Like when they played Michigan's not great this year, but you're still playing against the history there.
And a hard-nosed defense, too.
Yeah,
that's one thing Michigan really does have in their favor. Even without Will Johnson, the Wolverines kept that close because of their front seven, and their D-line is really physical. So I think that's probably a really good warm-up for Ohio State because, as we just saw in their graphic, Ohio State, I think, has the #1 overall defense in the country. Really well-rounded group. They're physical up front. They've got good, quick, lengthy cornerbacks. It's going to be tough. It's going to be interesting to see how the Hoosiers are able to move the ball.
Yeah, because, they've gone through kind of dry spells in their games. Even when they were kind of like knocking teams up and down the field, they've had periods where they're just, they sputter, they go 3 and out a couple times. And
they were trailing to Michigan State before finally, finding their rhythm and, killing them. But
yeah, they've struggled with teams like Washington. But of course, Ohio State, no stranger to struggles themselves with a litany of games. They were down after a quarter to Northwestern.
Yeah.
They've dealt with a lot of things. So I'm very interested. I think it'll be a good game. But if Ohio State isn't the best defense in the country, I think these two teams in our next game have a claim. In the most American game of the slate, Army and Notre Dame will play each other this weekend on Saturday night. And let's take a second to kind of look at the history and see what this game really means to college football, because it's a game really 100 years in the making. It's the first time they've met as ranked teams since 1958. One of the more well-played series in Notre Dame's history. It's only their 4th meeting since 2000, but back in the early days, the halcyon era of college football, this was the game. That's what it was referred to as. And it's the 100-year anniversary of that #1 versus #2 game in 1924 that led Notre Dame to their first national title off the back of the legendary Four Horsemen. So this is my waxing poet. We've been talking about
this is awesome.
We've been talking about the state of college football, but it's just, man, this sport it still just is the best in times like this.
It still is, and you got to have faith going forward that a lot of the kinks are going to work themselves out. And
it always does.
Exactly, it always does. Change is inevitable, and in everything, especially in college football. So I think this one is going to be really cool to finally see again. but especially because of that history. That's what makes it so special. And that's why we get fired up talking about the rivalry games, because, this game hasn't happened with a lot of stakes since the 1950s.
The Korean War was going on then, man.
And that is since long gone, believe it or not. But now...
We'll get to it. Actually, no, it hasn't, because that war never ended, technically. We picked a bad example there.
That's just, the technicality there does still exist. But again, we're not only talking about the historical significance of it, it has extreme college football playoff implications. If you told that to anyone, I think, before this season...
This game wasn't even supposed to happen before the...
They'd be like, what are you talking about? The Army Black Knights in football? That doesn't exist.
But man,
they look good.
It's another classic. This is a rivalry that used to exclusively be played at Yankee Stadium. And now they're met in maybe their biggest game since those war-era games. And man, number 6, like Notre Dame, rebounding heavily from the Northern Illinois disaster. They've just been beating teams senseless to the point where yesterday they beat Virginia 35-14. It kind of felt like a disappointment because they beat Florida State 52-3. Beat Purdue 66-7.
It was 28-0. Pretty quickly there. So don't paint it as it wasn't a blowout.
No,
exactly.
The Irish
they're a good team, man.
They've just been beating teams the way, a team that's supposed to contend for a national title does beat teams. And it's very encouraging. But so is Army. Army has been beating teams, up and down the field, in the American Conference to the point where if Boise State slips up, Army could see themselves in that Group of 5 playoff, and especially if they get the win on Saturday. And it's going to come down to their defense, which is very good, top 10 in most stats. Notre Dame's defense, I feel like this one's just going to be a slug because here's the stats Notre Dame is in the top 5 in on defense.
Talk to me, JP.
Scoring, red zone, yards per play, first downs allowed, yards allowed per game, third down rate, and interceptions.
That was 7. I was
they
counting
are
his
in the
fingers
top
there.
5/top 10 in 7 very important stats, I feel like. And for Army, their defense is very good themselves. These are two teams that are 2-3 in opponent points per game, and so it's really going to be cold in New York. At
football
in the
It's
Bronx.
football.
It's football.
Yeah.
Two teams that run the ball. Army, the option, of course, they've evolved, but Bryson Daly has over 1,000 rushing yards at quarterback and 21 rushing touchdowns, 7 passing
total. Yeah,
7 passing touchdowns as well. But Notre Dame has the 3-headed dragon of Jeremiah Love with 12 touchdowns on the ground, Riley Leonard with 13 touchdowns on the ground, and Jadarian Price with 4 touchdowns. And those guys combined for nearly 2,000 combined rushing yards. So two very kind of similar teams going at it on Saturday night.
Yeah, of course, an obvious statement, which team is going to stop the run will probably be more successful. But I think it's really going to come down to, how Army looks in the trenches. They've not played a team like Notre Dame. And Notre Dame is very physical. If you watch the Navy game, which, a team that Army's very similar to, Notre Dame really bullied the midshipmen up front. And if they're going to have success against Army, I'd expect, that to be kind of the similar thing.
Because that's where Army really, and, the service academy, the admittance requirement, you can't be too big. So they suffer at such a great deficit in the trenches, and ever since they got those new chop block rules, it's hampered the offensive capability. It'll be a great game. I'm sure of that. I think it'll be very different from what Notre Dame did to Navy.
Definitely agree.
I just think this is what college football is all about. But in another massive game, maybe the one good product of conference realignment, a surging Arizona State team takes on BYU, two teams that are in the Big 12. This could be BYU's once and for all final death blow.
Oh, it's their last stand right here. They have to beat the Sun Devils. Otherwise, I think ASU sneaks into the Big 12 conference game against the Colorado Buffaloes. It's a weird sentence. I don't think anybody really predicted the Big 12 to turn out this way. But this is a massive, massive game for both of these squads. BYU, of course, dropping their first game.
How far will they fall in the playoff ranking? They dropped to 14th in the AP. They have a great win over SMU on the road, as you can see there. But that loss, of course, very recent. That's good. It'll be interesting to see kind of what happens there. But also for Arizona State, how far will they rise? Easily their best win of the season, and they've been surging as of late. So, two teams that run the ball a lot, of course, but Jeremy Retzlaff at quarterback for BYU is very good. And Arizona State's quarterback has been, managing the game well, but they really, who's their running back, Spencer?
Man, that's Cam Scatterbo, man. Just
Scatterbo.
An electric, short little white dude who is just immune to getting tackled. This guy just nose down, just rolls through guys. But he's quick, man. He's a Sacramento State transfer. Really good at the FCS level a couple of years ago. I think it's his second year at Arizona State. But he had some crazy highlights last year, so I had heard of him even when the Sun Devils weren't too good. But
Kenny
this
Dillingham,
year,
hey, he's writing the ship up there in Tempe. Almost a brutal slip up there by the boy.
SHIP is what we're going to say. Perfect segue into the commercials. We're going to drink some water, calm ourselves down, but please don't go anywhere because, of course, we've got more sports news for after this break.
And after a win over East Carolina, the Gamecock women's soccer team is moving on in the NCAA tournament. You know, Spencer, 8 appearances by East Carolina against the Gamecock women's soccer team, 8 losses for East Carolina. It all comes down to Kat Berry.
Man, they don't want to see us. I'll tell you what, they don't. It's not even close. But Kat Berry making a lot of history in this one. She not only tied the record for most career goals in the Garnet and Black, she then broke it with her second goal of the game. She also has 100 career appearances. So, I mean, the epitome of a legend for this program. And what'll be her last year trying to lead this team back into the College Cup. But, you know, it was Katie Shea Collins outdoing her with her second hat trick of the season. And again, ECU just really couldn't hang.
No, they couldn't. And for the Gamecocks, they'll take on Minnesota, who defeated South Dakota State in Chapel Hill on November 22nd. That'll be a huge game for them. Of course, you know, Carolina, this is what, their 12th straight NCAA tournament appearance in women's soccer. And they've always gone kind of far, but they've came up just short of the College Cup. Other than 2017.
Yeah, a couple years ago, they made a run to, I think, the Elite Eight. It was either the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight before losing. But again, they were more so underdogs in that one. This year's team, they're ranked overall 14th in the country. Minnesota outside the top 25, but did pick up a win, you know, to move to the second round. Again, really everything in this team revolves around Kat Berry. She leads the all-time leading points leader, goals leader now. And it's really just all about what she can do leading the offensive charge up front. But again, this team is really good in the defensive end. Gracie Falla is, you know, a 2-time All-SEC Defender of the Year. She's really good. They got a good keeper in net. And this team is kind of built for tournament time. You know, you kind of have this point forward almost of attack, center forward, if you will, Kat Berry, who can just kind of not only distribute to her teammates like Katie Shea Collins, but she can also do it herself. And I think this team's going to be kind of really fun to watch as the tournament keeps going on.
Absolutely. They have the horses to compete with anyone, I think, in the NCAA. So, you know, it's going to be fun. And, of course, you know, the men's team will find out if they're going to the tournament tomorrow at 1 p.m. So we'll see what happens there. Fingers crossed. After they had a great season.
They did, you know, their best in recent memory, but they're not the only ones having a great season. Cock Hockey has a massive weekend coming up. They're playing 3 games in 3 days at 3 different venues. It's going to be a real test for these guys.
The bus fare is going to be crazy there for them. Friday night, they take on the Tennessee Volunteers, a team that, you know, not having the best year, but they really are kind of always a threat to South Carolina. It feels like we always play them kind of weirdly. And then they go play NC State in Truist Field at the Battle at the Ballpark. An NC State team responsible for 1 of 2 losses on the season, the other being to the Tampa Spartans. And then they go to Knoxville to play the Volunteers to end that series.
That's a tough but competitive and fun stretch, man.
It is. I mean, that's why you play the game, man. And, of course, you know, in these big-time games, you look to the big-time players, John Riggins, Jake Pushkar, Tommy Marvin. But also, you know, there's no way Tyler Tomoyan can be in net for 3 games in 3 days. So who's going to step up? Well, it'll be Zach Hayes, who struggled against NC State in his 1 start. But, you know, he could get the revenge, or he could be that Friday night guy to kind of keep Tomoyan fresh for Saturday. Or it could be Peter Papadopoulos, who looked really nice in his 1 start of the season. So Carolina, this is where having a wealth of talent, I think, really comes into play. I was about to say,
having that option is really nice. So you don't just send out Tomoyan out there and he's just gassed, you know, which is likely what would happen. I mean, he is excellent in net, but definitely used to getting those rests, especially in the weekend series. You know, he usually plays the Friday night game. Hayes usually gets the Saturday, or Papadopoulos. So it's going to be interesting to see how they divvy it up. But again, this South Carolina team, as they usually do, lead AAU Division I hockey in point differential. You're like, yay, and in penalty minutes. And, you know, it's their brand. I was going to say, you definitely expect it from this team. They play physical. They're not afraid to spend a little time in the penalty box. but they lead that by, I believe, 75 minutes
Probably over
Tampa.
I was going to say
in
Tampa,
second place,
because
over an hour over the Spartans in the penalty box, and they're in second place. It's pretty funny, but I mean, you know, that's if you've been
it comes
watching.
back to bite them at horrible times if you watched the Tampa series. But you know, at other points you can just overpower the team because you can live with it. So
There you go.
I mean, but it's. Hey, I'm excited. It's going to be a great weekend of hockey for the Gamecocks.
Oh, definitely tune in. We will be there Friday. You know, that's for sure, right at the Plex. And I believe the Saturday game is going to be on ESPN+. NC State's got a little deal worked out with them. So please check it out. See what hockey can do. I mean, yeah, this is not only our senior year with the team, but also a lot of great guys we've get to call over the years that are really trying to go out on top once more. But again, that's all we've got for you today, of course, without pick'ems. So we'll be right back after the break to finish up yet another episode of Ball Don't Lie.
Welcome back to BDL Pick'ems. A very mediocre week of Pick'ems. Left myself and Spencer at a stalemate. I went 5-5. He went 6-4. I've got 51 wins and 40 losses on the season. A tough go of things lately. Well, Spencer has a 60-31 record. We're going to run through things here, starting with the NFL tonight. In LA, almost said the San Diego Chargers after I said LA.
Dude, if only.
But the Chargers,
not only realignment. Sorry, dude, we're tangent.
Relocation.
Relocation and realignment. Two R words
Save the
we
Oakland
do
A's.
not like.
Okay.
They start with R's.
The Superchargers will take on the Cincinnati Bengals in a battle of what-if quarterbacks, because they always be like, oh, man, if this just, Spencer, who will become champion of the hypothetical?
I mean, I'm taking the Chargers. I think their defense is good. They run the ball well under Harbaugh. I think Justin Herbert's been really good this year. If you look at the offense he has, man, dude, their best two players on offense are the offensive tackles and Ladd McConkey. Like, it's kind of sad what they're giving what I think would be a really premier quarterback. I know it's another what if, but he can't help what he's surrounded by, but I think he's been making the most out of it. Again, the Bengals offense has been clicking. I just think I don't think their defense is going to be able to do anything in this one.
Sorry, that was very important. It's for my bit later. Then we move on to Monday Night Football. I'm taking the Chargers, of course. Then Monday Night Football, geez, the Cowboys suck. I sure wouldn't want to be the guy who's picking them.
You won't be.
Exactly.
We are both going to take
the
the Houston Texans because why would you pick a team whose owner is against the team?
CeeDee Lamb, blinded by the rage of God.
I can't understand that. You know, your best player is like, the light's in my eyes. Maybe we should do something about it. No.
I made the stadium.
Jerry Jones is a lot more cared about the Netflix Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight that happened at AT&T Stadium than he is about the Cowboys winning in it, and that tells you all you need to know about it.
That fight's a lot like watching the Cowboys this season.
Pick your poison in that one. We're going to move on to college football. Again, them short-haired dogs come to Willie B next weekend. I'm taking the Gamecocks here. I don't think it's any surprise.
Like, come on. Wofford lost to the Citadel.
They did. They did. We'll leave you with that. Number 7, Alabama heads on the road to Norman to take on Oklahoma. JP, who you got in this one?
I think this game will be closer than maybe some people are thinking. Oklahoma has a very good defense, and Alabama, struggles to throw the ball with consistency. And if Oklahoma can contain Milroe on the ground, it could be like a slog for a little bit. I think Bama pulls away, but it won't be the blowout I think people are expecting it to be.
Yeah, I also. I think it'll be a little close because Oklahoma has a good front seven, but their offense is too bad.
It's just awful.
I don't think they can do anything. I think Alabama, with the dual threat ability of Jalen Milroe, will get the job done in a game you probably don't want to be watching. So we'll move on. Number 5, Indiana. At number 2, Ohio State. Now, this is a game you're going to want to watch. It's a shame it's a big noon kickoff, which another thing that is just grinds my gears. You should have good games at noon. You shouldn't have top 10 matchups at noon. That's not cool. Put them under the lights.
It sucks. And you know what else sucks is that I think Ohio State wins.
That would stink.
I think Indiana gives them all they can muster, but the voodoo magic of the Buckeyes, I can't.
At home, it makes sense.
I can't bet against it.
I wouldn't bet against it, but I am going to pick the Hoosiers. I mean, I think Indiana, they're the magical team this year. They're bringing the juice, and I think they're going to get it done for the first time since 1988. That's a long time. That is a very long time to not beat one team. I think they finally get it done because of the history that rides against them. I think Coach Sig gets the boys ready, and they take down the Buckeyes in Columbus. Wouldn't that be something?
It would. I mean, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I'm rooting for it. But
yeah, I'm okay going wrong, being wrong if that were to happen.
Yeah.
I'm just going with Indiana. I'm going with my heart there. Number 18, Army goes, to play Notre Dame, number 6 in the country. Another historic matchup. JP, I know this one's near and dear to your heart.
In lore, they are known as famine, pestilence, death, and destruction. Those are only aliases. Their real names are Leonard, Love, Price, and Golden. They are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, of the tornado that will destroy the Army Black Knights, outlined against a blue-gray November sky. The new look 4 horsemen of Notre Dame rise again and pushes the Irish back to the halcyon days of college football as they march their way towards the college football playoff. I mean, this is just what football is about, man. 2 teams that run the football, play defense, Golden Dome shining under the lights in the Bronx at Yankee Stadium. I'm riding with the Irish, and I can't believe there would be anyone in the world who won it.
It won't be me. The 5th horseman, JP, he rides with them. Hey, I'm okay being the 6th guy on a horse. I think horses are chill. Go Notre Dame. They get it done, man. I have. Awesome game. I think the Irish get it done at Yankee Stadium. That was an all-time JP moment. That fired me up. That is what football is about. I just don't think Army can handle what Notre Dame's going to bring to the table. I think this is...
We bring the boom.
After all that, you do that. Oh, God. What have we become? Pittsburgh travels to Louisville for an ACC matchup that was really cool 3 weeks ago.
That's the best way to put it. I mean, I like both these teams.
They looked so much better 3 weeks ago.
If Eli Holstein is healthy, I think this could be a very good game. Holstein and Show, 2 of the best quarterbacks in not just the ACC, but college football in general. Unfortunately, this game has lost a lot of the luster. Both teams struggling with injuries. Both teams struggling to hold on to close games. Pitt's 3 losses. I mean, they got kind of clobbered by SMU. They lose to Virginia by 5, lose to Clemson by 4. Louisville, 3 to Stanford, 7 to everybody else. It's a tough blow for 2 teams that were playing fun football. I'm going to go with the home team here in Louisville just because I trust their defense a little bit more, and also the fact that Holstein might not play, and Nate Yarnell is terrible.
Yeah. I think Louisville also gets it done. I mean, they should have beaten Stanford. I really just can't tell you what they were thinking there. An all-time blunder, and just just shot themselves right in the foot.
Never a more accurate portrayal of just kind of the historic, norm of Louisville football, I think.
Trust me, they lived up to it all. They sure did. But I think they bounce back. I think they take down Pittsburgh, who really looked out of the game and somehow found a way back against Clemson. Their defense really held it together. I think Louisville overpowers them with Ja'Cory Brooks having a big game. Moving on to one of the most fun games of the week. It's number 14, BYU, at number 21, Arizona State. JP, are you raising the forks?
Oh, I think I'm raising the forks, baby. This is the biggest game for Arizona State since they hosted number 5 Oregon back when they had Jaden Daniels at quarterback. They upended the Ducks.
That's a sentence.
I know. It's been a while, to quote Stained. But Kenny Dillingham riding the ship up there in Tempe, man. I love.
And that was ship again.
Yeah, I had to reiterate ship. Just, man, what a fun team. I think it'll be a great game. I think Arizona State pulls it out late, man.
I think so, too. At home, I think Tempe's going to be it's going to be a madhouse.
Rocking.
If you know one thing about Arizona State, hey,
they like to party.
They know how to party. Their head coach looks like he knows how to party. Remember when they stormed the field? He's out there just dancing with everybody. This team's having fun.
Yeah.
Do you think BYU doesn't have fun? They've just barely dodged defeat a couple weeks in a row. The Jayhawks finally got them down. Arizona State keeps them down. Forks up for this one. Another Big 12 matchup is number 16, Colorado, on the road to Kansas. I would have held the forks up. I didn't really know how to do it, so I didn't want to mess it up.
If you know, you know. But, Kansas, a team much better than their record just showed going into last week, and they proved it. I like this team. They're fun. I just think Colorado wins. Colorado, despite the fact that, my God, their schedule is horrible, they're showing marketed improvement, and I think they get a lot of credit for that, even though I think it says a lot more about the Big 12 than it does the Colorado itself. But I think they just keep winning, man.
I think you could have taken the Big 12 preseason poll and flipped it, and it's a lot more as what the Big 12 looks like right now. All the teams expected to be horrible are pretty been quite good, and all the teams you expected to be good are god-awful, like Utah. What happened?
Oklahoma State, 0-7 in conference play.
Hey, I mean, what
happened
Gundy
there?
ball has fallen. But I'm taking the Buffs. They've been great as of late, and as you mentioned, a big improvement. And moving on to our final game of the week, it's an SEC matchup. The Runnin' Rebs go on the road to the Swamp, to a Gators team that has really turned some heads.
You can stand me up at the gates of hell, and I won't back down. I'm picking the Gators, DJ Lagway. I believe in a Billy Napier and company. I think the Gators chomp the Rebs' playoff hopes away.
I think so too, and more so than I think so, I want them to.
Dude,
Man,
yeah,
this
is what Tom Petty wants.
And Tom Petty rules. Man.
Who
If
is
you don't
to
believe-
deny Tom Petty his birthright, which is Gator football?
This is known to be true. I'm also going with Florida. I just really want Ole Miss to lose. I think it's been time. And it's either they lose this week or they lose next week. I won't be picking them the rest of the way. You can count on that. That's going to do it for this episode of Ball Don't Lie. It was all over the place.
A delirious
A little
slump.
weird. Thanks for watching. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, X, and TikTok at SGTV at USC.
To keep up with all of our content, be sure to also visit us online at sgtv@usc.com. For SGTV, I'm JP Barry.
And I'm Spencer Ball from all of us here at SGTV. Have a great week, Carolina.
Forever to thee.
And the Gators both win.
Baby.